Choice A. Darth Maul escapes. As Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were battling Darth Maul, Obi-Wan was stuck behind the barrier. He watched as his master dueled the skilled Sith. Maul defeated Qui-Gon, stabbing him through the gut. Obi-Wan ran to assist, and Darth Maul seemed the rage radiating off of the young Jedi. Maul's ignorance was his weakness, despite the fury Obi-Wan had. Maul was overconfident and decided to leap in a way. He went after Obi-Wan and used an elaborate series of moves to throw off the Padawan. Obi-Wan blocked each one and returned the strikes back at Maul, and he had trouble blocking each time. Maul took a moment. As soon as there was a different moment to breathe, Maul hopped back and observed the Jedi. Obi-Wan didn't move. Like a predator, he paced back and forth and waited for Maul to make the next move. There were shouts from outside. It seemed as though there were people who needed Obi-Wan's help. Obi-Wan was unfazed. He didn't so much as glance in their direction. Maul peeked at the corpse of the Jedi he'd slain, and he knew that he was becoming too aggressive. His master would be disappointed if Maul continued a lost fight. It was better to regroup and live to fight another day, for there wasn't many more years to come. His master's plan wouldn't be finished in a day, so why should Maul finish his fight in one? With that in mind, Maul fled the scene with his impressive movement speed. He left Obi-Wan behind and didn't bother looking to see if the Jedi had followed him. Maul left Naboo and went to the rendezvous point set with his master. As soon as the ship touched down, Maul saw Darth Sidious waiting for him in the shadows. Maul met with his master, and he informed him that Qui-Gon Jinn was dead, while the Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, had lived. From there, Maul became Sidious's right hand. Maul did the heavy lifting, slaughtering any who got in his way. He was far too vile for politics, which put a bump in Sidious's plan. His plan took twice as long because of this setback. Throughout the years, Maul and Obi-Wan met many times, and Maul took the joy in torturing the Jedi. Obi-Wan was on the verge of breaking all he knew, just for the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Maul adored the twisted, fury-filled look in Obi-Wan's eyes. Whenever Maul so much as stepped in his direction, there was a hint of fear, too. A fear Maul drank and loved. Obi-Wan never killed Maul or harmed him. Maul was always one step ahead. However, there was only one issue. Sidious was manipulating Anakin Skywalker to do his bidding. Slowly but surely, the Skywalker boy was becoming more prominent in Sidious's plans. Maul had a vision about Skywalker rising to become Sidious's new puppet. Maul knew his life was at stake, so he played the long game. He waited and waited until one day, the Chancellor was kidnapped, and Maul was on the ship to make sure it stayed that way. He was curious to why Sidious would get himself kidnapped, and why he wanted Maul on the ship. Then it hit him. Maul felt the presence. He felt Skywalker's undeniably strong Force presence. It was as though Maul was whacked in the face with it, and his body was paralyzed. The sense was so strong that Maul didn't pay attention to the fact that Obi-Wan was there as well. Maul's eyes went to the tied-up Chancellor, Maul's golden irises bulging until he swore he saw red. The Chancellor was unaffected by Maul's glance. There were no words the Chancellor could say that would change Maul's mind. Darth Maul knew it right there. He was being betrayed. When Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived, Maul no longer had the strength to fight. His visions had been confirmed, and this plan was a setup to get rid of Maul. It was Anakin's turn. He was the new puppet. So, when Anakin and Obi-Wan stepped forward, Maul dropped his lightsaber and refused to fight. He knew there was no getting through to Obi-Wan, so with the Force, he knocked the Jedi into the platform. Obi-Wan hit his head and fell to the floor, unconscious. Anakin drew his sword at him, but Maul still didn't move to fight. MAUL informed Skywalker of who the Chancellor really was. He asked Anakin to reach out and feel it, to sense the darkness flooding inside the one tied behind them. Although it was difficult, Anakin admitted he felt an uneasy presence about the man. MAUL offered him everything, every last piece of evidence he had, from the comm logs to transmissions received. Anakin was forced to choose between his enemy and the one who was manipulating him this entire time. Anakin didn't want to fight if he didn't have to. He decided to shut off his sword and listen to MAUL. Although MAUL didn't have the evidence on him, he promised Anakin that he would send it. He made the case that he rendered Obi-Wan unconscious and killed his master years ago, so there was no point in not fighting Anakin now. Through it all, Anakin showed the conflict on his face. He kept glancing between the two, and he wasn't sure of what to do. MAUL made an offer to Anakin that he'd have him halting in his tracks. He told Skywalker that he could reshape the galaxy together. They could make a new rule, revamp the Jedi Order, anything Anakin wanted to save. MAUL guaranteed them protection, including Kenobi. Anakin took a moment longer to think. He searched MAUL's eyes for a sign of falsity. When he found none, his gaze shifted to the Chancellor, who told Anakin how ridiculous this was. MAUL went over all he knew about Palpatine's plan, every last detail he could think of. He shared it with Anakin. By the end of it, Anakin had his lightsaber activated and aimed towards the Chancellor. All at once, the Chancellor knew it was over. Using the Force, he broke himself free and took out his lightsaber. He always had it hidden. Palpatine had multiple plans in case anything went wrong, such as this. MAUL and Anakin joined together to battle the new threat. It was a difficult fight, and MAUL would be lying if he said he wasn't terrified. As the duel commenced, MAUL made it his goal to stall for as long as possible, giving Obi-Wan time to recover. Looking back, MAUL shouldn't have knocked Obi-Wan unconscious, but he didn't think the Jedi would allow Anakin to think for himself. Kenobi was far too enraged over MAUL's actions to ever consider believing him. Anakin and MAUL battled Palpatine for as long as they could, the fight going nowhere. Neither side was winning. It was a balanced duel until Obi-Wan came and joined. 3 skilled warriors against the Sith was much more difficult on Palpatine. They ended up winning after a long, grueling fight that resulted in Anakin collapsing from the exhaustion. MAUL insisted on eliminating Palpatine as he was too dangerous to be kept alive. But Obi-Wan believed fiercely in the code, or at least enough to believe Palpatine needed a trial. Anakin agreed with Obi-Wan, and MAUL decided his best option was to flee like he did all those years ago on Naboo. He fled from everyone, not wishing to be locked behind bars with the Sith Lord. He traveled as far away from the war as possible. MAUL went into hiding and planned his return. Palpatine made a mockery out of him, but MAUL would prove him wrong. He'd prove them all wrong. In due time, he would come back and rise again. The Jedi would fear him, and he would bring order to the galaxy, order that didn't come from the betrayal Palpatine subjected MAUL to. Palpatine was found guilty and sentenced to death. During the transfer, he killed 2 Jedi before he was subdued. Anakin was deeply disturbed by this series of events. Kenobi attempted to help, but there were no words he could say that would comfort Anakin. Anakin went to Padme after Palpatine was dead. She already gave birth by the time the court made its decision on the Sith. Anakin had his family, but they were surely Force sensitive. Would they fall victim to the horrors that would be the Jedi Order? Anakin wasn't sure what to do, but he knew that there needed to be an order. Anakin wouldn't let his children go through the same terrors he did. He refused to let his family get torn apart, so he waited. He waited for Emperor MAUL to return. Choice B. Palpatine goes to fight Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were battling a dangerous Sith Lord with power beyond their understanding. A man who seemed old based on his stiff posture and raspy voice was a Sith Lord, moving with high agility. Neither of them knew the name of the Sith, but he was laughing throughout it all. They were on Naboo, dueling near a giant pit that peered bottomless. Obi-Wan was trembling behind his master. They had never dealt with such a powerful being before. It felt as though he was a manifestation of power, coming to decide Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's fate. Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan to stay back. Obi-Wan was frozen, but he managed to listen to his master. The Sith dueled Qui-Gon, the two skilled duelists exchanging blows until it seemed as though Qui-Gon could win. Obi-Wan found the strength to assist, going behind the Sith and preparing to strike the final blow, while his master kept the Dark Lord distracted. However, the Sith had other plans. He predicted the attack and moved to match it. A bolt of lightning flew out of his fingertips and sent Obi-Wan soaring back. He hit the wall and dropped his lightsaber. His vision was blurry, and his arms tingled from the impact. With a groan, Obi-Wan shook himself back into consciousness. What he found when he awakened was straight out of a nightmare. Qui-Gon was dead, his body cut in half from the glowing red saber the Sith possessed. More laughter spewed from the Sith's throat, Obi-Wan shouting with all the energy he had left in his body. He jumped up, rage fueling him as he pounced on the one who dared strike down his master. It was a pitiful attempt. Obi-Wan was no match for the Sith, despite his skills and training. Kenobi, like his master, was defeated. He fell to the ground next to Qui-Gon and watched his master as their lives faded away. Obi-Wan was quiet through it all, and a moment later he fell into the darkness. The Sith Lord Palpatine left them behind. He didn't bother doing anything with their bodies or taking their lightsabers. He departed Naboo and looked for the disturbance in the Force. The disturbance was Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine knew someone special was around. He heard through his countless sources that Qui-Gon wanted to train a boy. If Skywalker was that boy, what could he mean for the fate of the galaxy? Palpatine wished to find out. He sensed the raw strength that oozed from the child's figure. The last thing he wanted was for it to fall into the Jedi's hands. Instead, he disposed of the threat. The threat called Qui-Gon Jinn, who wanted to train Palpatine's new apprentice. Palpatine sent MAUL to do an impossible task. A task that would surely get the Sith killed, leaving way for Anakin to become Palpatine's apprentice. The one and only ruler of the Sith was maintained, and balance would be formed in the Force. MAUL was tasked with ambushing a Republic outpost in a Republic-controlled territory. It would be impossible for him to take on all those clones with their arsenals, not to mention the multiple Jedi who were there. MAUL questioned the order himself, but Palpatine assumed it was doable. If he stuck to the plan and was careful, the plan was actually sabotaged to have MAUL fail. It was left out of one vital detail. Where the clones were stationed, Palpatine's plans told MAUL to go to one corner of the outpost without guards, but in reality there was a whole patrol there that took care of Palpatine's MAUL problem, as the brand new clone army had killed him. Now all that was left was Anakin, as Palpatine rose through the ranks and came closer to ruling the galaxy. The Jedi grew suspicious of a Sith Lord. Plo Koon and his Padawan Ahsoka Tano searched for the Sith, but they too were too late. Anakin was already Palpatine's apprentice. He took Anakin to Coruscant. Together they executed Order 66, with Anakin storming the temple. Anakin went to Mustafar after killing the last of the Separatist leaders, including General Grievous. After he joined his master on Coruscant and oversaw the rise of the Empire, Since Anakin never met Padme, she survived but never gave birth to Luke or Leia. That meant Anakin was the only Skywalker. There were no threats to Palpatine's rule. Palpatine ruled over the galaxy, uncontested. Although there was a rebellion, it was a futile effort. No one could stop the Empire. Anakin was a highly trained and skilled Sith named Darth Vader. He went around forcing planets into submission. Soon, the entire galaxy was under the Emperor's control. The rebellion was snuffed out thanks to Vader and the Inquisitors. No Jedi survived, not even Ahsoka Tano. With the Jedi gone and no Skywalkers rising to defeat the Empire, there was no hope for the galaxy. The galaxy would remain under Palpatine's control. The Empire ruled, and the rebellion's spark fizzled away. Choice C. Other Jedi go to fight Maul. Instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn escorting the Queen to safety, a different team of Jedi were dispatched. Mace Windu and Ada Gala went to handle the possible threats the Queen would encounter. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon persuaded Mace and Ada that there was a Sith threat that was lurking around the corner. Master Windu was cautious, but Ada believed that their comms and proceeded to investigate for disturbances. When they reached Naboo, Ada searched every corner she could until a war broke out on the surface. Separating her and Master Windu, Darth Maul appeared and cornered her. She was taken off guard, but she managed to stall until Master Windu found her, and they took him together. However, Maul was much faster than they were expecting. He was a deadly Sith who ended up killing Ada. Mace was enraged by the fellow Jedi's death. Mace took Maul down, killing him. Although the Jedi Council disagreed with the decision, Mace made the case that he was far too dangerous to be left alive. The Jedi held a funeral for Ada, Mace vowing not to let more Sith rise up. Master Windu kept a closer eye on the dark side, spending most of his days searching for it. He kept his composure and stayed calm, scouring through the archives to investigate the past of the Sith. Mace looked for patterns, searching for signs that another Sith could be among them. Palpatine saw Mace Windu as a threat. Palpatine had a new apprentice now, but Mace Windu crawling down the Sith's back. It was impossible to take any risks. Mace was taking more assignments, investigating the galaxy for more signs that a Sith would appear. Palpatine took his time to flesh out his plan. Instead of moving quicker, Palpatine resorted to moving much slower. The clones were difficult to get by Mace, but out of desperation, Mace accepted them. Still, he was suspicious. He was suspicious of everything, often investigating to an annoying degree. As Master Windu came closer to the truth, Palpatine orchestrated his execution before he could find out. Palpatine made an elaborate plan to force Mace to walk into a trap. For the first time in a long time, Palpatine was careless, but purposeful. He let his mask slip for a split second around Mace, knowing the Jedi would take the bait. Palpatine went off on his own business, which was really an excuse to lead Mace into a trap. Master Windu arrived at the warehouse Palpatine went to, and as soon as Master Windu confronted him, the trap was sprung. Count Dooku was there to surprise attack the Jedi. Mace caught off guard by the fight as Master Windu battled the fallen Jedi. Palpatine watched in silence. It was clear Mace would win, but it was still close. At the last second, Palpatine joined in and took control of the duel. Although it was a massive risk, Palpatine had confidence Mace wouldn't survive. Palpatine laughed the entire time, banging his lightsaber off of Mace's, until the Jedi fell. Together, Dooku and Palpatine got rid of the threat. Now Mace was gone. The threat was gone. Palpatine went back to business as usual, framing Mace's death as an ambush by an assassin. He paid a bounty hunter as much as possible to take the fall, seeing as the hunter was convinced he'd break out in a day. He took the large sum and ran with it. Palpatine had no idea if the hunter broke out or not. He didn't care either way. His plan went back to normal as it could be. Anyway, Palpatine continued with his plan and built it up over the years. He went after Anakin Skywalker, manipulating him and prying on his vulnerabilities. Although the young Jedi was disturbed by the death of Master Windu, it only brought a greater opportunity to manipulate Skywalker. Palpatine spun it as yet another failure of the Jedi. He said Mace lost his way and was too caught up in his arrogance to realize who was lurking in the shadows. Anakin believed him based on his past experience with Mace. Anakin wasn't a huge fan of the deceased Jedi, and Palpatine used that to his advantage. As time passed, Anakin became a puppet for Palpatine. He was completely under Palpatine's control. By the time he revealed himself to Anakin, Skywalker was fully his. Anakin wasn't surprised. He didn't feel betrayed or upset. Instead, he seemed to be at ease. Together, Palpatine and Anakin executed Order 66 as early as possible. Anakin led the charge and destroyed the Separatist leaders, along with the Jedi at the Jedi Temple. Since they executed Order 66 so early, Obi-Wan hadn't gotten back in time to find Anakin on Mustafar. Anakin already returned to Palpatine and prepared to help Padme through her birth. Unknown to Anakin, Palpatine was slowly draining her life force away. He was killing her, and by the time she was done giving birth, she was gone. The children were taken away by Palpatine, him planning to raise the children in the new Empire. Anakin was enraged. He exploded at the Emperor, who chose to manipulate Anakin again. He told Anakin it was his fault, not Palpatine's. He told Anakin he wasn't strong enough to save his love. He lacked the power needed to do what was necessary to reshape the galaxy. To sell the lie more, Palpatine told Anakin his children couldn't be his until he earned them. Anakin, still furious, vowed to become better. He trained constantly, wondering if he could at least save Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. However, he lost himself to the dark side. He became a slave to the darkness and forgot about his need to save his two friends. Even his children were a lost whisper in the wind. Now Anakin was gone. The kids were Palpatine's. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan were in hiding, unsure of what to do other than trying to help the rebellion. There was no hope left in the galaxy. Luke and Leia were under Palpatine's control, quickly becoming Inquisitors and growing in strength. Luke became the Grand Inquisitor, and Darth Vader watched without saying a word. The galaxy was undone, ruled by the Empire, and the Jedi were to blame. Choice D. Dooku joins Qui-Gon. Count Dooku had more respect for Qui-Gon than any other Jedi. There was a certain peace to Qui-Gon that allowed the constant voices in Dooku's mind to halt for a moment. Qui-Gon shared similar views as Dooku, too. They both didn't care much for the Jedi Council, who often overlooked danger and got caught in their arrogance. Now that it mattered, Dooku had already put a plan in place to fix what had been lost. The Jedi were corrupt and hurting the galaxy. Dooku would fix that. As he strolled towards his objective, he was stopped by Qui-Gon outside the elevator door. Master Yaddle was present as well, speaking on the supposed Sith that Qui-Gon had witnessed. Of course, the Council assured Qui-Gon they would look into it, and they believed him. If that were the case, more would have been done. Dooku didn't believe for a moment that the Council would investigate the issue further. Although enraged, Dooku had a job to do. He went and erased Kamino from the archives, choosing to stick with Qui-Gon after Dooku knew the claims about the Sith were true. Dooku didn't want to anger his new boss, but if Dooku had to choose between Qui-Gon and his new side, Dooku knew he'd choose. Not long after Qui-Gon and his Padawan were going to Naboo, Dooku decided to join to see what would happen. And if the claims of the Sith would come out true, he planned on getting recordings of the confrontation. The council would be backed into a corner if there was physical proof to show a Sith was threatening the Jedi. Dooku followed Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and they were happy to have help. They investigated the area, but Qui-Gon and Dooku froze halfway through their search. They sensed it. There was a presence there. It was dark, like a shadow fell over the entire planet. Before Dooku and Qui-Gon could even react, Sith showed himself from behind the thick metal doors. They parted, showing off the creature that had horns spiking out of the top of his head. The Sith brought out his lightsaber, revealing the two sides it had. Dooku, on instinct, got in front of Qui-Gon with his weapon raised. Dooku recognized MAUL, and MAUL recognized him. A bed of sweat dribbled down the side of Dooku's face. His hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. Qui-Gon stepped out from behind him and remaining by his side. Qui-Gon insisted that they take the Sith together. Dooku didn't like the idea, but there was no turning back now. He chose Qui-Gon over the new life he had been setting up. Although he had many regrets, Dooku knew he had to stick by his decision and the consequences they would bring. He did, so he jumped into action. Together, the three talented Jedi were more powerful than MAUL. Although it still resulted in a tough fight, Dooku focused on blocking, protecting Qui-Gon from the vicious attacks of MAUL. Dooku knew about his fighting style, thanks to his new master, which gave him an advantage. The fight was dangerous, but they won without any casualties. Dooku stared at the corpse of MAUL, and realized he needed to inform the Jedi of the other Sith. He told Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan about the Sith Lord planning to take down the Jedi. Thankfully, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan took it seriously. As soon as they got back to Coruscant, Dooku was taken into custody and questioned. He was put on trial for his involvement in the Sith's plans. However, Palpatine was found and killed after much resistance and the deaths of 3 Jedi. That was all that mattered to Dooku. His sacrifice was worth it. Yes, he would likely face much prison time, but at least the Jedi wouldn't be destroyed entirely. As much as Dooku wanted peace, he chose to keep Qui-Gon alive. He stood by that choice. Qui-Gon took in Anakin despite the Council's wishes. Together, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn practically raised Anakin and helped him through all of his dark times. Qui-Gon was very understanding of Anakin, often criticizing the Council whenever they treated Anakin unfairly. Dooku spoke about Kamino as well, which led to the Jedi discovering the plot planted inside of the clones. They removed the chips and took over Kamino, gathering a clone army that couldn't be used against them. Now the Republic was ready to go to war with the Separatists, without Dooku there to assist, or Palpatine. The Separatists were in a rough spot, and the Republic were winning the war. Meanwhile, Dooku stayed in captivity for several years, but not as long as he would have if he didn't come clean and help to stop a dangerous Sith. The galaxy was safe. Anakin would go on to marry Padme and have children without any issues. As Palpatine wasn't there to put in the dreams, a new generation of Skywalkers were born, and they would go on to train with Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and the aging Qui-Gon Jinn, who was forever thankful for Dooku's choice to stay with the light. Dooku still disagreed with the ways of the Jedi, which led to the resentment. However, it was worth to keep Qui-Gon alive. And that is going to be the interactive what if of Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Now, what do you think of all of these random choices? What do you think would have happened if any of this actually happened at all? I do want to say thank you so much for watching this brand new Star Wars video. I will be doing more on the channel, so do make sure to request them in the comments down below. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the brand new video. Take care and have a fantastic day. Peace out.